Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to take a look at a UK-based transportation company. And they had some pretty serious data problems. We're talking about huge data growth, always that ransomware threat hanging over their heads, and the need to keep their customer-facing systems up all the time, no matter what happens. So we're going to see how they use StoneFly's DR365V solution to take care of these challenges. And believe me, if you're dealing with data in a big enterprise environment, their story might sound really familiar.
You know what's interesting is that this company's situation wasn't that unusual. They had like this really patchwork IT setup, a mix of different hardware and backup software, and just wasn't doing the job anymore. I think their CTO said it best when he said, "We had to make sure that our online systems were always available to our customers. Without any downtime or problems, our customers need real-time information to plan their trips, and we couldn't let ransomware get in the way of that."
Yeah, that's everyone's worst nightmare, isn't it? Your whole business depends on data,
Hmm.
and it's under attack all the time. So what did they do? Did they try to fix their old system or just start over?
Well, they were smart and decided to get StoneFly's experts involved. Our team took a look at their needs, the high availability they needed, scaling up, and the constant threat of ransomware. And we recommended the DR365V appliance. It's kind of like a data center in a box. They get everything they need in one system: storage, backup, disaster recovery, security, all of it.
Data center in a box. That sounds pretty impressive. Can you give us more details on that? What exactly is in this DR365V?
It's more than just a fancy name. The DR365V has high-performance storage, SN, NAS, even object storage compatible with S3. It also has very strong security features, like air gapping and immutability. And it's not just about keeping data safe, it's about being able to access and recover that data instantly if things go wrong.
So it's not just backing up the data, it's about making sure you can use it, even when the worst happens. I bet speed was a big deal for this transportation company because they rely so much on real-time data. Did the DR365V make things faster for them?
Oh, absolutely. One of the first things they noticed was a huge improvement in backup speed. The DR365V uses NVMe SSDs and really powerful processors, so right away, you get much better performance compared to regular hard drives. And because they could run their Veeam backup software right on the DR365V appliance, their backups didn't slow down their everyday operations at all. It's kind of like having a dedicated lane for your backups, so they don't cause traffic for everything else.
I like that analogy, and I can see how that separation would be a big relief for their IT team. No more worrying about backups slowing down the whole system, especially during those busy times. But did all this speed mean things got more complicated? Was their IT team suddenly stuck managing this new system?
Not at all. Actually, it was the opposite. The DR365V has all these automated features for backups, snapshots, and replication, and that was a game changer for them. Their IT staff could finally focus on more important tasks instead of being bogged down by manual backup routines. And, automation isn't just about making things easier, it's also about reducing the chance of human error, which is super important when you're dealing with really important data.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You give your IT team more time to focus on the bigger picture, and you get better data protection at the same time. It's a win-win situation. But let's talk about the big problem, ransomware. I'm sure that was a huge concern for this transportation company, especially since their business depends on real-time information. How did the DR365V help them feel more secure?
This is where the DR365V really stands out. It's not just about backing up, it's about having multiple layers of protection against ransomware. So first, you have the automated air gapping we talked about, which physically isolates backups from the network. It's like having a separate, really secure vault where you keep your backups safe even if your main system gets attacked.
Even if hackers get into your system, they can't touch the backups. That's reassuring. But what about the data itself? Couldn't attackers just encrypt the data on those air-gapped backups?
That's where immutability comes in. The DR365V uses immutable storage volumes. So once data is written to these volumes, it can't be changed, encrypted, or deleted. It's like having a tamper-proof seal on your backups. And to make their data protection even stronger, the DR365V also supports the 3-2-1 backup rule. 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media with 1 copy offsite.
That's a really thorough approach. You've got the backups, the physical isolation, and the unchangeable data. It sounds like a really strong defense, even against really advanced ransomware attacks. Speaking of defense, you mentioned that this transportation company needed real-time information. What happens if something does go wrong? Even with the best security, systems can still fail. How fast can they recover with the DR365V?
That's one of the most amazing things about the DR365V. It's not just about protecting data, it's about making that data available instantly when you need it most. With the DR365V, you can run VMs directly on the appliance itself, so you don't have to waste time restoring data to a separate server. Their critical systems can be up and running again in minutes, not hours or days.
Wow, so no more waiting for a long restore process. That's a huge benefit, especially for a company that can't afford any downtime. But what about that offsite copy of the data? You mentioned the 321 rule. Does the DR365V help with that too?
Absolutely. The DR365V offers optional cloud support. You can send backup copies to Azure, AWS, or even StoneFly's own private cloud, which gives you that extra layer of protection and fulfills that important offsite requirement. You can even instantly run VMs in the cloud for disaster recovery. It's like having a completely separate data center ready to go.
Wow, so many options. It sounds really flexible. And speaking of flexibility, what if this company keeps growing? Their data needs are only going to get bigger. Can the DR365V keep up with that?
That's one of the main things we considered when designing the DR365V. It's built to scale as your business grows. You can scale up by adding more drives to the appliance, or scale out by adding more nodes to the system. So you basically create a super powerful cluster. You choose the approach that works best for you and your budget.
So you're not stuck with just one setup. You can change and grow as your needs change. That's great to hear. I'm starting to see why this transportation company went with the DR365V. It's not just a backup solution. It's a whole platform for managing, protecting, and recovering data.
Yeah.
But we've only just started. In part two, we'll dig even deeper into the technical side of the DR365V and see how it goes beyond basic backups to provide that next level of data protection. We'll also look at some of the other benefits this transportation company experienced after they implemented this solution. But before we move on, if you're already interested in what you've heard and want to know more, you can contact StoneFly.
You can reach our team at sales@stonefly.com. Give us a call at +1 510 265 1616 or visit our website at www.stonefly.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about how this transportation company used the DR365V to make their backups faster and improve their security. So now let's get into some of the more technical parts of the appliance and see how it goes beyond the basics to give them even better data protection.
Okay, I'm ready to get technical. One of the things that impressed me was how the DR365V can actually detect ransomware, not just recover from it. How does it do that? That sounds almost too good to be true.
It is pretty amazing technology. The DR365V uses machine learning to spot ransomware while backups are happening. It looks at the data as it's being backed up and looks for signs of an attack, like unusual file sizes, weird encryption patterns, any unexpected changes to file extensions. It's constantly learning and getting better at recognizing those little clues. That might mean ransomware is at work.
So it's not just about reacting after the attack happens. It's about stopping ransomware before it can do any damage. But isn't that a lot of work for a backup appliance? I would think all that analysis would slow things down.
That's where the design of the DR365V is really important. It's built for speed, with powerful processors and those super fast NVMe SSDs we talked about earlier. And remember, the Veeam backup software runs directly on the appliance, so there's no delay because of network traffic. All that analysis happens in real time without slowing down backups at all.
That makes sense. It's like having a whole security team working with your backup team,
Exactly.
making sure everything's checked and double-checked before it gets stored away safely. But what if the DR365V does find something suspicious? Does it just flag it, or does it actually do something?
It doesn't just raise a flag, it takes action to protect your data. If the DR365V sees something that looks like ransomware,
Yeah.
it can quarantine those suspicious files so they don't get backed up and spread the problem. It can even stop the whole backup process to prevent any further damage. And of course, it immediately alerts your IT team so they can investigate and take further action.
It sounds incredibly proactive. It's like a security system that doesn't just detect intruders, but also locks them out of the house and calls the police. But security is just one part of the story, right? Data recovery is just as important, especially for a business like this one that can't afford any downtime. We talked about running VMs directly on the appliance. But what about those bigger disaster situations? How does the DR365V handle those?
The DR365V is made with disaster recovery in mind. You can replicate your entire dataset to a second DR365V appliance at a different location. This way, even if your main site is completely destroyed, you have a complete and up-to-date copy of your data ready to go.
Now that's peace of mind. But what about the cloud? Lots of companies use cloud services now. Does the DR365V work well with the cloud?
Absolutely. It integrates seamlessly with popular cloud platforms like Azure and AWS, and of course, our own StoneFly private cloud. You can replicate your data to the cloud, run VMs in the cloud, or even use the cloud for long-term archiving. It gives you tons of flexibility and make sure your data is protected no matter where it is.
So you're not just limited to on-site storage. You can extend your data protection to the cloud and create a truly hybrid environment. That's really impressive. But let's go back to this transportation company for a minute. We've been talking about all the technical stuff the DR365V can do, but what were the actual results they saw after implementing this solution?
Well, their CTO is really happy with how fast and efficient their backups became. They could back up their whole system much faster than before. And because the backup process was automated and didn't interfere with their production environment, their IT team had more time to focus on other important projects.
That's a huge benefit. You get stronger data protection, quicker backups, and a more productive IT team. That's a triple win. But what about their overall security? Did they see improvements there too?
Definitely. The DR365V's layered security approach, with air gapping, immutability, and that machine learning-based ransomware detection, gave them the confidence that their data was truly safe. Even from the most sophisticated cyber attacks, they knew that even if they were hit with ransomware, they could recover quickly and without much disruption to their business.
That's the kind of peace of mind that every company needs in today's world. It sounds like the DR365V was a total game changer for this transportation company. They solved their data problems and improved their security, their efficiency, and how resilient their business is overall. But we're not done yet. In part 3, we'll explore some of the more advanced ways you can deploy the DR365V, like scale-out configurations and high availability clusters. We'll also talk about the different storage media options and how you can customize the system to fit your specific needs.
And if you're already thinking that the DR365V might be right for you, don't hesitate to reach out to StoneFly.
You can find us at www.stonefly.com. Email us at sales@stonefly.com or call us at +1 510 265 1616. Our expert team is here to answer any questions you have and help you find the perfect solution for your needs. We'll be back in a few. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about this UK-based transportation company and how they totally changed their data protection using StoneFly's DR365V. We've focused on the main features so far, like those really fast backups, strong ransomware protection, and the ability to recover almost instantly. But there's more to this appliance, a whole other level of flexibility that makes it even more impressive.
You got it. And this company's experience is just one example of what's possible. The DR365V is so powerful because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's designed to adapt to different organizations, whether it's a small business or a big enterprise with complex IT needs.
Okay, I like where this is going. Let's talk about deployment options. You mentioned scale-out configurations earlier. What does that actually mean? Could this transportation company start with a small system and then expand their DR365V as their data needs grow?
Definitely. The DR365V grows with your business. You can start with one appliance and then add more nodes as you need more storage and processing power. These nodes work together as a cluster, sharing the work and providing high availability. So if one node fails, the others take over automatically. This makes sure your data is always protected and accessible. That peace of mind again.
So it's like building a data protection fortress, brick by brick. You start with a strong base and then add to it as you need to. But wouldn't managing a big cluster like that get complicated? I imagine you'd need a whole team of IT experts just to keep it running.
That's the best part. The DR365V is designed to be simple. The management interface is easy to use, even for a large cluster. You can see the status of all your nodes, configure backups and replication, and manage storage, all from one central place. Even with a complex setup, it's still surprisingly easy to manage.
That's impressive. You get all the advantages of a large, highly available system without the complexity of those old-school enterprise solutions. But all that data has to be stored somewhere, right? What about storage media? Does the DR365V limit what kind of drives you can use?
Not at all. We know that different kinds of data need different storage. So the DR365V gives you a lot of options. You can combine different drives to create a tiered storage environment that's perfectly tailored to your needs.
Okay, let's talk about storage tiers. What options are there?
For your most important applications, where speed is crucial, things like databases or virtual machines that need to be running all the time, you can use high-performance NVMe SSDs. They're incredibly fast and have extremely low latency.
So that's your top tier, the fast lane for data that can't wait. What about the other tiers?
For data that isn't as performance sensitive, like file shares or backups that you don't need to access right away, you can use SAS drives. They offer a good balance between performance and cost.
And I'm guessing for huge amounts of data, like long-term archives or backups, you can use regular hard drives, since they're the cheapest option per gigabyte.
Exactly. The DR365V lets you customize your storage to your needs and budget, so you don't waste money on storage for data that doesn't need top performance.
It's like having a custom-designed closet with different shelves and drawers for different things. You keep the stuff you need often in front and the things you rarely use in the back. But what about redundancy? If a drive fails, what happens to the data on that drive?
That's where RAID comes in. The DR365V has a built-in RAID controller that protects your data from drive failures. It spreads the data across multiple drives, so if one drive dies, the system keeps working without losing any data. It's that safety net we talked about
A
before.
RAID is like insurance for your data. You hope you never need it, but it's there to protect you just in case. It seems like the DR365V has everything covered. But one last question. We talked about this transportation company being worried about ransomware. Did they ever test their recovery plan?
They did, and that's another area where the DR365V really shines. It has a built-in sandbox where you can test your backups and recovery procedures without affecting your live systems.
So they could simulate a ransomware attack or system crash and see how the DR365V would handle it.
Exactly. They could run their critical systems in the sandbox, make sure their backups were clean, and practice their recovery steps, all without risking their actual operations. It gave them confidence that their data was truly protected, and that they could recover quickly and efficiently if they ever needed to.
That's great. It's like a fire drill for your data. You practice what to do in an emergency, so if a real fire happens, you're ready. It's clear that the DR365V is more than just a backup appliance. It's a complete platform for managing, protecting, and recovering data. It's about giving companies like this transportation company the tools they need to keep their data safe, accessible, and working for them, no matter what challenges they face.
And if you want to experience the StoneFly difference yourself, we encourage you to contact us.
You can visit our website at www.stonefly.com, email us at sales@stonefly.com, or call us at +1 500 265 1618. Our team of experts is here to answer any questions and help you find the right solution for you. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive as we explored the DR365V. We hope you found it informative. Until next time, stay curious and keep your data safe.